Hello. I want to talk to you for a minute or two about rodents in relation to bushcraft or camping in the wild. Now, wild is obviously a subjective term, and that could mean anything from a corner of a local park to a farmer's field or the middle of flipping Alaska. Either way, well, I can't say I'm an expert on Alaska, but either way, say the chances are, if you stay somewhere for more than a couple of days and you're eating food, which is likely, you are going to attract rodents, or rodents are going to cross your path. Going on here. Okay. Now, I have personal experience of two classes of rodents, rats and moles. So, firstly, we'll discuss the first arrival I had when I arrived here was moles. Now, if you've seen my video on the construction of this shelter, or bender, as it's known by them their travelling types, I had a scrunching going on underneath the plastic, and whilst laying in bed, and thought, hey ho, I have company. And over the next few days, I worked out I had a mole which was digging underneath my ground sheet where I've got my bed, and popping up under the tent. And one afternoon or one morning, I can't remember now, I watched him digging his way along, and in his little furrow coming up as he went, digging his way along near my on the side of the tent here, and got my old camera out and thought, oh cool, a mole, brilliant, and was pleased to see him, because they're kind of interesting. You don't very often get to watch moles at work. However, the first time it rained, that little fellow had routed an inch ball mains water feed straight under my bed. Oh yes, you see, they look all innocent. Oh, they play all cute, these little fellas. But when it comes to it, oh, they've got hidden agendas. So, yes, I'm sat there 20 minutes into the rainstorm. I'm taking shelter in my shelter, as you do. And there's suddenly a massive puddle starts appearing. I'm like, where the hell's it coming from? I lift up my carpet, lifts up the ground sheet under it. Now, well, I actually had two ground sheets overlapping, two plastic tarpaulins, and there's half an inch of water sat there, and the carpet's blooming floating on it. So, yeah, big issue. Thing was, to make it all the more serious, and why it's worth bearing in mind, is I arrived here in the summer, and if you're thinking of building a sort of shelter and staying there for any length of time, excuse me, didn't empty my ash box. She's not breathing proper. But, yes, I arrived in the summer, and of course the ground was nice and dry. I built my tent, and even when it rained, it stayed dry inside, and it was nice. I could take my shoes off and wander around in my socks inside, which feels homely and is nice to be able to do on an evening. You don't always want to be wandering around in flipping combat boots. It gets a bit annoying. However, that completely ruined that, because it was at the beginning of the autumn when the rain arrived, completely flooded the floor, and consequently it doesn't dry out. It's drained away, obviously, but it doesn't dry out properly once it cools down in the autumn. So if your floor gets wet, you kind of, it's going to stay wet. You don't get enough sunlight, enough heat off the sun. There's a storm coming in tonight. Massive tree fell down over the other side of the stream. It was incredible. It's like 10 seconds, it's all like crashing, creaking thing. It's amazing. I've got a massive pile of wood over there now. I'm pleased as punch. I've just wooded all that area out, and then great big trees come down. So that's all my wood. That's got that, and I got that for the end of the winter. So we're all good. Yeah. So in order to combat that, I've put down ferns on my floor, so it can still breathe and dry out naturally. But now I have these, ferns that I've taken out of the woods down there, and I've crisscrossed them. I've got about 8 layers of ferns, and I laid them sort of each 3 or 4 inches apart, and crisscrossed them, built them up, crisscrossing, and that's made a really nice sort of slightly bouncy, warm floor. I can sit on it. I put my sheepskin rug on it. I tell you what, bring a sheepskin rug. It's great to sit on. Nicer than any blooming horrible, inflatable plastic thing. Yeah, but those ferns have done the trick. Actually, if you arrive somewhere and it's damp, go for some. Get yourself a hole. I went into the woods there, and being in Cornwall, they're all full of great big ferns, rather than bracken. But bracken had worked just as well. And I built it open. It's really nice. I could just sit on the floor, and it's blooming November now, end of November. So yeah. Other thing is rats. The rats turned up. I've got a squeaky family living underneath this log pile. They turned up about a month, 6 weeks ago. Sounded like there was some kind of domestic violence scene going on there. It was a bit disturbing for about 2 or 3 weeks. Every night sounded like they were trying to kill one of the children. I considered calling the police. I decided against it. I was conflictual. Don't get me wrong. But I left them to it, because I'm not entirely sure where to draw the line when it comes to rodent abuse. However, they consequently immediately started eating any food I had left out overnight, because I didn't think about it. What as well I hadn't thought about is earlier in the year, over the summer, when I'd cooked and I'd got a bit of, don't you start doing that, I've got a backdraft problem. Yeah, during the summer I chucked any leftover food I'd cooked. If I had a bit left over that I didn't eat, or anything went mouldy, I didn't think it through and I just slung it in bushes, in the brambles, 10 yards away. Of course, what you're doing is just littering the ground around you with food, and you're going to create a blooming hotspot for rats, aren't you? Great dummy. But in the middle of a field, you don't think about, it's a bit easy to think, it's not like you're in a city, and the rats are a little more few and far between out here. There is, and I must research it. I'd be interested to know whether country rats are cleaner than your city rats. I mean, you'd expect them to be cleaner to an extent, but I wonder whether they still carry all the same diseases. In order to stop them eating my food, I've hung a bag, and I will attach a photo of it here. First time I've ever done that. And in this bag, you'll see I've just hooked it onto the spine of the tent, and I've got all my food in there in a bin bag. And so far that's been hung up for about a week, 10 days, and they don't appear to have discovered it. They may, in a few months' time, when they get more hungry, start wandering around the poles of this tent, although I'm not entirely sure whether they'll go that far, and then I'll have to think of a way to stop them getting into that bag. But otherwise, if you're going to be staying in a place for a prolonged period, think about how you're going to keep your food away from rats, because they will come for it, even if you're out in the countryside. The nearest town to me is about, well, it's not that far away, but it's far enough. It's about a mile's walk. So yeah, That's it. Moles and rats. Watch out for them. They're dastardly fiends. You must combat the enemy rodents and live in harmony with nature. Thanks for watching.